Talk to me. WSRadio.com.
The San Diego Council on Literacy brings you Literacy for All with your host, Jose Cruz.
Welcome back to the show. This is our third segment, and just a frame of reference. This is Tuesday. No, is it Tuesday? It's Thursday. This is January the 14th, 2021. It's the Literacy for All radio show. I'm Jose Cruz, and we're all on WS Radio. And our guest for this segment and the next segment is John Corcoran. He is an author and national literacy advocate, and my friend, and an authority on literacy in the U.S. And John, welcome back to the show.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
You bet. We're going to have fun with this. And John, what I just wanted to say, and I'm sorry for stepping on your lines already, but what I wanted to say is, for a long time, in I think our view of the literacy folks, so it's John Corcoran, the teacher who couldn't read. He's a spokesperson, but John, you're an authority on this topic. And sometimes we forget that, and especially your third book, and I want you to talk about that a little bit. You really do a great job of putting everything together in a place where we can understand just the whole challenge of literacy, going back thousands of years all the way to today. So thank you for your work and just for being a partner in this cause.
As you know a bit about my story, I have been telling my story for quite some time now, and humans have actually been telling stories intuitively to entertain one another and teach values to one another for thousands of years, and everybody has their own life experience of their own story. But not everybody has had the opportunity that I've had to share my story on the printed page. My stories have been written in books, and I've written the books and magazines and newspapers, and talked about on television and radio. And I've been I was a teacher for 17 years, right. And I couldn't read. I read at the elementary level. I graduated from high school. I graduated from college. And I when I learned to read at the age of 48, I never thought I would ever tell my story publicly. It was really a secret, as a lot of adults that can't read. We keep it pretty close to our chest, the fact that we can't read and write or spell. But my story was a human interest story, a teacher who couldn't read for 17 years in California. And so it I was a poster boy for, like, the teacher who couldn't read was my label. As a part of me. I said, no, I'm more than that. I've been at this for a long time. And I have told my story, and I wanted to tell the story, not for me, but for other little boys and little girls that have difficulty learning how to read. So that's how I got into this thing. And I never, in my wildest imagination, could have believed that I would share my story publicly, like I'm sharing it with you now. I'm talking about it. A lot of people, when they heard the story, they thought it was impossible to go through college and graduate and then teach school for 17 years successfully.
Right.
So there were some people that didn't believe my story, and but there were a lot of people that could really relate to my story also. And so I had to work through a lot of things as I shared my story. And what's really exciting right now, I'm going to get to share a little bit of my story again, in terms of being a partner with a Emmy award-winning director and producer, and we're going to do a documentary a full documentary and highlighting illiteracy, subliteracy, and learning disabilities, and hoping this documentary is going to help change the conversation that you and I have been having for almost 30 years now.
Right.
And the conversation has changed. And in telling my story and writing books, and I've had an opportunity to really psychoanalyze myself, I guess. I've learned a lot about myself. And I said some things in the early days that I didn't quite understand the truth of them. And I can remember one of the things I said. I used to say adults that have deficiencies in basic skills, adults that can't read, write, and spell, we're suspended in our childhood emotionally, psychologically, intellectually, academically. And I remember saying it and the words coming out, but now I have a better understanding, a clearer understanding of what all that meant. I was kind of correct about it.
You're very correct, John. Very true, very deep, and I know it still plays back to you.
It does, and it really it speaks to other adults also about themselves. And sometimes I say it's been a growing up process, in a lot of different ways, and it dealt with a lot of different feelings, from anger to the frustration of not knowing how to read and buying into a big lie that something was wrong with your brain. Mm-hmm. But today, if we've done anything in the last 30 years, we've done a lot of research. And the research that we've done it bears out that we can teach people how to read and write and spell. And, 30 years ago, we said there are just some people that aren't capable. Their
Mm-hmm.
brains aren't capable.
Yeah.
Well, we know better today.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. That's exciting.
That's good news.
And I carried that with me for a long time, even when I started learning to read, and other adults will tell you the same thing. We start learning how to read. We can't even really believe that we're reading, mm-hmm. because we thought something was wrong with our brain. It's like you having a car that didn't start up very good, in the morning. And then it starting up the first time you turn the key. It was like those kinds of things, and that I have experienced.
Right. Yeah.
Go ahead.
And so now you have the documentary coming up, John, and tell us the timeline, the timetable on this thing, because those of us in the network of literacy advocates, we need that. Yes.
Well, we're hoping to start the shooting. We've been working on it for a few months. Nick Nanton, who partnered with the John Corcoran Foundation here, and our aim is to change the conversation. We're bringing an all-star team of literacy people to be a part of the story, and our time schedule. We've been working for about three months now, pretty hard on the research, doing the research. Mm-hmm. And I got a lot of commitment. We got commitments from a lot of people, names that you'd recognize. Mm-hmm. And we got some famous people lined up also to be a part of it. And Nick has won 20 Emmys. Wow. So he knows what he's doing. Yeah. And, in telling our story, and it's not just the story we get to talk about. We have been talking about the problem for a long time, and we have solutions, and we have not really closed the gap between what we know and what we do, and we hope that our documentary is going to push that conversation up a little bit more into the solution piece of it, and we can do this. I feel like we have a secret, that's we have a literacy crisis.
Yeah.
That is hiding in plain sight in our country right now. It's in plain sight, and I'm hoping that the documentary is going to bring more people to being able to see what that is. And one of the things that I think you agree with this, that there doesn't seem to be the urgency to deal with this issue. And if you can't read, write, and spell, there's no way, no matter how clever or how smart you are, you're not going to be able to be successful in the classroom, and you're not going to be able to be fully successful, maximize your fullest potential, I should probably say, in the classroom, and certainly in the workplace. And I just feel that everybody should have an opportunity to learn to read, no matter what age they are, where they are. And I have had this fire in my belly for ever since I started learning to read.
Yeah, and John, I'm going to stop because we're going to break, but you still have that fire. That hasn't changed. You and I met back in 1987 or so that's going, 34 years now, and that fire is still there. We do need people to act more urgently on this cause, because you're right. I want to get back to what you said when we come back for the next segment about helping the little boys and girls and such, and that you're still doing that. That you're still doing that because you were one of them, and so it's so important. So we're going to be back with John Corcoran, author and literacy advocate, and more. You're listening to the Literacy for All radio show on WS Radio, the worldwide leader in Internet talk.
Thank you for listening to WS Radio. Improve your business and your life with useful information from experts and thought leaders. WS Radio is radio with ROI.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is working to help keep you and your community safe from the threat of novel or new coronavirus. Take the following everyday steps to help avoid the spread of all respiratory viruses. Wash your hands often with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. Cover your cough or sneeze with a tissue. Throw the tissue away and then wash your hands. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects or surfaces, such as remote controls and doorknobs. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. And stay home if you are sick. Call your healthcare provider if you develop fever, cough, or difficulty breathing. For more tips, visit cdc.gov.
Can you imagine a world without children? A world where children don't play, or dream, or imagine?
At St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, we're working every day to find cures for diseases that strike down children, because we can't imagine a world without children. Can you?
Finding cures, saving children. St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. To learn how you can help, log on to our website, stjude.org.
Homeless veterans and their families are suffering and need our support, but many won't ask or don't know that help is within reach. Veterans Community Services is here to help. Amazingly, about 35% of the homeless in our neighborhoods are veterans with families. Low-income veterans or their friends are encouraged to contact Veterans Community Services and reach out for help with housing and other services. Call now, 800-974-9909.
Do you want to be a professional coach? Are you in business trying to make a real difference with people you manage or work with? Have you started a coaching practice that isn't quite getting off the ground? Get the skills you need to be a successful coach today with the Coaches Training Program from Accomplishment Coaching. The Coaches Training Program will show you how to help others focus and be more fulfilled. Whether you want to improve your company's bottom line or create a thriving coaching practice, Accomplishment Coaching can give you the distinctions and practices you need to coach others effectively today. Accomplishment Coaching has spent 6 years developing a cutting-edge coaches training program that will have you ready to coach people professionally in just 12 months, and you don't have to take time off work to do it. To find out more about the Coaches Training Program, just call 1-888-548-6813. That's 1-888-548-6813. 548-6813.
Talk to me. WSRadio.com.
The San Diego Council on Literacy brings you Literacy for All with your host, Jose Cruz.
Welcome back to the show. I'm Jose Cruz from the San Diego Council on Literacy. You're listening to the Literacy for All radio show on WS Radio, and we're talking to John Corcoran, who is an author and national literacy advocate. John, I know we had planned to have you, I guess something must have gone wrong, but we had planned to have you listen to the first two segments in this hour. We had Nora Briggs. She's the executive director of the Dollywood Foundation, their North American operations. And you would have loved what you heard, so you'll get the link and you'll get to listen to what you missed. But, man, you would have really loved this because, one, Dolly had a message for us, and she's just said hi to everybody. Hi to you, John. And right. And just how glad she is that we're doing her Imagination Library program. But we need the John Corcorans, we need the Dolly Partons, we need the people that you're bringing together for this documentary to create the urgency for this cause and to help those little boys and girls who are in first and second grade right now, and they don't know what the heck's going on, why they can't read and write. What do you want to say about those spokespeople, John, and your role and what's happening with these children?
Well, I want to say the key to teaching little boys and girls and teenagers and adults how to read is proper instruction. And proper instruction comes from properly trained teachers. And properly trained teachers come from universities that are properly preparing them. And there's a gap between what we know, what the science knows, what the science teaches us, and what's happening at the university level. So for one thing, there's a big gap between what we know and what we do, and we need to be able to close that gap. And I learned to read because I had proper instruction, and I started out with a volunteer tutor.
But this was as an adult, John. So you actually didn't learn to read, right? And so,
at 48, I went to a public library, Carlsbad Public Library, and I was assigned a volunteer tutor. When I went there, I didn't, like most adults, when we go to the learning table, we don't really believe that we can learn to read. I mean, we've had a long history of failure, and sometimes people say, well, it's our fault. We didn't try hard enough, or we've tried. Believe me, we tried, and most adults will tell you that one of the things they wanted to do is to learn to read. So the passion to learn was there, but I just went to the public library. And I was fortunate enough to really get a volunteer that got me to probably about the sixth grade level, and I was just guessing a lot. And I in retrospect and with great respect, I say she was the ambulance driver that got me to the next level. And I went into a reading clinic in San Luis Obispo and had some diagnostic tests. I've never had those before, and I'm the beneficiary of science. And the science was there for me.
And John, the diagnosis for our listeners, how would you describe the block or the challenge that you had with reading?
The biggest one, and I want to point out that about 25% of the population learns to read like birds learn to fly. They walk by the library and they get it, and it's easy for them. About 50 to 60% of the population gets it in traditional ways, and at the tail end of that, we have on the opposite end of that spectrum. We have John Corcoran, and we have little boys and little girls that have difficulty processing language and learning to read. And in my case, I ended up in the dumb row, and that was a few years back. But we still have the dumb row, and we have the labeling, learning disabled, and those kinds of terms that we experience. But on that the diagnostic test that you asked me about, I have a severe auditory discrimination problem, and I couldn't distinguish the sounds. I mean, I could hear the sounds, but I really couldn't distinguish them. And I'll give you an example. My granddaughter's name was Kayla, and I couldn't process the sound L, so I called her Kaya.
Right.
And I left the sound for the L. And my daughter said, "Dad, it's Kayla." And then I'd say Kaya. And I thought I was saying Kayla. And that's just an example of it, but it's a little bit more complicated. But what I was a beneficiary of Pat Lindenwood's knowledge of the science. And now since that time, we've had another 30 years of research, and it's really definitely there. We really know a lot more about the brain. We used to think it was a natural thing for the human brain, like walking and talking. It's not a natural thing.
Yeah.
And so it's a little bit more complicated, but the good news is that I guess what I want to say in summation of this is that 95% of human beings can learn to read with proper instruction, and some of us need more direct instruction than others. But we all can learn to read, and we can learn to write, and we can learn to spell. And that's the good news that I experienced. And even when I first started talking, I was asked by the director of the program there in Carlsbad, asked me, they were full of joy. They taught me how to read. They wanted to tell the story to promote the, what can happen to an individual. And I said, no way. I didn't want to do that. That's the last thing I wanted to do, was to tell my story to my community here in Oceanside, where I taught school for 17 years.
Yeah, I know.
Too rough on my family, too rough on me.
Yeah.
But I did have some conversations with myself. Sometimes when you talk to yourself in the car, and you talk out loud and solve a lot of your problems. When I was asked, I talked to the little boy, that second grader, and that first grader and second grader, third grader that went through school started school and was put in the dumb room. I asked him if I should tell my story, publicly, and he said, "Yeah, tell the big people. They won't hurt us anymore, and we'll know how to read, and they'll stop this." Yeah. And then I got home and I told my wife that the director of the program, it was Linda Jones at that time, wanted me to share my story publicly. And she said, "Why don't you just shut up and read?" So I had a yes vote to speak publicly, and I had a no vote to speak publicly. And I continue to think about this a little bit. And I had a conversation with a teenager that didn't know how to read. And he was a kid that got suspended from school. He was a truant problem. He had disrupted his own education. It's the same story that's happening to teenagers right now in school.
Right.
If you can't read.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop you, John, just because we're running out of time. We're down to about 30 seconds. I want folks to be able to access your story. And before I tell you to give us your website for your foundation, thank you for your work on this documentary. We need to have you back when that thing's getting ready to come out. So there you go. So as a closure,
time flies.
Yeah, time flies, man. So a foundation email address or website address?
Yeah, how about a Facebook?
That'd be great.
John Corcoran Foundation's Facebook. You'll find me.
Yeah.
And it's the John Corcoran Foundation website. You'll find it there.
All right, real good. Because there's a lot here. John, you've only written 3 books more than me. And they're all rich. And I do recommend the third. What's the title of that book again? The Power of Reading? The Reading Gap. The Reading Gap.
The Reading Journey to...
Very good. Okay. Thank you, John. Sorry, we run out of time. John Corcoran on the Literacy for All radio show. I'm Jose Cruz, and we'll get this podcast out to you. You've been listening to us on WS Radio, the worldwide leader in Internet talk.
want to be a professional coach? Are you in business trying to make a real difference with people you manage or work with? Have you started a coaching practice that isn't quite getting off the ground? Get the skills you need to be a successful coach today with the Coaches Training Program from Accomplishment Coaching. The Coaches Training Program will show you how to help others focus and be more fulfilled. Whether you want to improve your company's bottom line or create a thriving coaching practice, Accomplishment Coaching can give you the distinctions and practices you need to coach others effectively today. Accomplishment Coaching has spent 6 years developing a cutting-edge coaches training program that will have you ready to coach people professionally in just 12 months, and you don't have to take time off work to do it. To find out more about the Coaches Training Program, just call 1-888-548-6813. That's 1-888-548-6813.
You can reduce your risk of COVID-19 by cleaning and disinfecting frequently touched items and surfaces every day. These items include remotes, tables, counters, light switches, doorknobs, handles, toilets, and sinks. Wear disposable gloves to clean and disinfect. If you can see that the item is dirty, wash first with soap and water or another general cleaner. Then use a household disinfectant to kill germs. Follow manufacturer's instructions for application and proper ventilation to safely use the product. For phones or other electronics, follow the manufacturer's instructions for cleaning and disinfecting. If no instructions, use alcohol-based wipes or sprays containing at least 70% alcohol. Dry surface thoroughly. For more tips, visit cdc.gov.
Some of the best sounds you'll ever hear are generic, safe, effective, even money-saving, just like FDA-approved generic drugs. Even if they don't come in the exact same color or shape as their brand name equivalents, they have the same key ingredients and go through a rigorous review process. Talk to your doctor or pharmacist today and visit fda.gov/generic drugs. Generics are safe, effective, and can save you money. You'll like the sound of that.
I raised $8,000 to build schools for South African children. After realizing how many people go hungry in San Diego, I now volunteer at a food pantry.
I'm spending the next year doing volunteer projects across 3 countries and helping in ways they designate to be the most helpful.
The World Link program at the Joan B. Kroc Institute for Peace and Justice recognizes the potential of youth as agents of social change. Learn how you can help youth become a generation of leaders in action at peace.sandiego.edu.